Hello everybody, Tabletop here, and today I want to talk to you about keeping track of your players in a game of Dungeons & Dragons. These are some tips and tricks that I've picked up playing pickup games in my local game store over the last few years. So, first and foremost, the first thing I'm going to do as my players are getting settled at the table is come up with a little cheat sheet of where my players are at the table and their character names. So if I'm not familiar with their name, I will also write it underneath their character name. So say our characters for the day are Tom, Mary, Bill, and Sue. Now, I'm not familiar with Sue, and I know her real name is Mary. I will write it under that name in parentheses. Now, these names correspond exactly to where they are at my table. So if I'm sitting here, Tom's going to be to my left, so on and so forth. I am then going to write what I would consider extra information. So whoever has the highest passive perception, I'm going to write the passive perception in parentheses underneath Bill, because he has the highest passive perception of a 16. This is commonly for pickup games where I don't have their character sheets or necessarily that information with me at all times. In addition to this, if I'm not familiar with a player or they specify their character's pronouns, I will make sure to write them underneath the character name. And if it's an individual, I will make sure to put it under their name. Next up, I will get my action trackers available. These are what I commonly use. They're just little board game cubes. When a player will make a roleplay action or speak up, I will put commonly a tracker on them to make sure that everybody is getting a chance at roleplay and everybody's being involved in the scenes. Once everybody's acted, I will clear them, and then I will go again and place them just to make sure that I am involving everyone at all times to the best of my ability, because this is something that I can forget at the table. Next up, let's talk about combat. Here we have our stat block. This is going to be where we're going to track our combat for this monster. So what I'm going to do is ask everyone to roll initiative, and then I'm going to write in order the initiative for everyone. And I will write their character name so that when I address them, say perfect table order, boom, boom, boom. And then I'll put the enemies. I'll either use the enemy's name here, would be Planetar, or if I'm using multiples, I might do P1, P2, P3, which is what I'm going to do here. P1, P2, and then P3. Now, once we go into combat, we're going to be going from top to bottom, reading down, and then going to the top. This is a combat where I'm not going to be adding anything else into the combat. There's going to be no surprises, so I didn't leave any extra room here. If there are other characters that might join, I'll leave about a space between each of these so that if I roll initiative for them, I can add them in. Next thing I'm going to do is, as it kicks off, I'm going to write myself a little diagram about where exactly P1, P2, and P3 are in relation to each other. So if P1 came in from the left and then P2 and P3 came in from the right, I would probably draw something similar to this and then label it. Now, as they move around the combat, I will draw little arrows or little lines so that I know that this one moved over here, so that if like 2 and 3 ever crossed, I would do crossing lines so that I knew which one was which. And then I'm going to also have my hit point trackers below. And this is going to be addition, not subtraction. In the moment, addition is a lot easier to calculate quickly versus trying to subtract from the total number. Here we would be talking about 200. It would be difficult to subtract each individual time to eventually reach down to 0. Counting up and adding, much faster when you're dealing with a situation like this where you have to keep that combat moving. If combat's flying at me quickly, I will throw down numbers and add them up when I have a free moment. So if P1, all of a sudden my Gloomstalker Ranger friend all of a sudden gets his first round of combat, does his 47 attacks, and just starts throwing numbers at me, I can just write them down really fast. 15, 19, 21, 36 for the first volley, say. When I have a moment, I'll add that up, 91, and you'll see that that line means that is the new total. So it is not, he's at 15, 19, 21, 36. His current total is 91, and it will keep being add up from there. Sometimes it'll take more than one column, depending on if the monster you are playing with has healing abilities or things go wrong during the combat and they start doing very small amounts of damage in larger quantities. Another thing that I commonly forget is to make sure that the players do their saving throws at the end of a turn to end a status effect. So I will commonly put a little S next to a player's name so that when it becomes their turn, that signifies that they need to make a save at the end of their turn. Or if I have something like a combat ability up, like say Spirit Guardians or something like that, that signifies that they need to make a save for that ability. Normally, in a given night, I will run a couple of combat encounters, sometimes as much as 3, but usually not more than that. So each sheet with the stat block on it will keep track of its own initiative for that encounter. Sometimes if I know I'm doing multiple encounters or larger, more involved combats, I will bring a whiteboard and do this on a whiteboard versus doing it in pencil. In addition to these things, I also use status rings on the table so that the players can see what effects they are currently under. So not only do I know that they need to make a save, they can see on the board that their character is charmed or stunned or unconscious. I hope this little peer behind the DM screen is helpful for you. Please, down in the comments, tell me how you keep track of initiative. This is something that I use for a lot of pickup games. I don't normally make full initiative trackers or put little cards on top of my DM screen because these things are constantly changing. Players are bringing in new characters and I'm dealing with new players on a very regular basis. So this is a way for me to do it, kind of quick and dirty, to keep my players' information right at my fingertips. I want to thank you all for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.